In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and merciful, I welcome you all in our today's session. Today we are going to talk about strategy review, evaluation, and control. The chapter objectives are: number one, to describe a practical framework for evaluating strategies. Number two, explain why strategy evaluation is complex, sensitive, and yet essential for organizational success. Number three, discuss the importance of contingency planning in strategy evaluation. Number four, discuss the role of auditing in strategy evaluation. Number five, discuss the balanced scorecard. And number six, discuss the 3 21st century challenges in strategic management. Now we are looking at a comprehensive strategic management model, and we are at the stage of strategy evaluation now. Initially, we have gone through the development of mission and vision statements. After that, we discussed external and internal audit. Then we talked about long-term objectives. Then we discussed generating and evaluating strategies. In chapter number 7, we discussed strategy implementation issues related to management. And in chapter number 8, we discussed strategy implementation issues related to marketing, finance, accounting, research and development, and MIS. And now we are assuming that the organizations who have implemented the strategies have now got their performance results, performance in terms of productivity, profitability, and satisfaction. And now they are evaluating their performance as if the performance is according to the designed objectives towards the right direction. If yes, they are supposed to re-energize the system. And if no, they may go for either re-engineering or restructuring. And that would basically completes the strategic management journey. And from there, the feedback is flowing back. And then in the next chapter, we'll be talking about business ethics, social responsibility, and environmental sustainability. And in addition to that, we'll be also talking about global and international issues. Now, starting the chapter formally, the first topic is the nature of strategy evaluation. Strategy evaluation includes 3 basic activities. Number 1, examining the underlying basis of a firm's strategy. Number 2, comparing expected results with actual results. And number 3, taking corrective actions to ensure that performance conforms to our plans. Now, starting from the nature of strategy evaluation discussion, there are 2 aspects we need to talk about. One is related with consonance and advantage. And the other aspect would be talking about consistency and feasibility. When we talk about consonance and advantage, remember that these are mostly based on firm's external assessment. Whereas when we talk about consistency and feasibility, these are largely based on an internal assessment. Now we're going to talk about Rummelt's criteria for evaluating strategies. When we talk about Rumoulet's criteria for evaluating strategies, first of all, we'll be looking at the aspect of consistency. And it is said that a strategy should not present inconsistent goals and policies. Organizational conflict and interdepartmental bickering are often symptoms of managerial disorder, but these problems may also be a sign of strategic inconsistency. 3 guidelines help determine if organizational problems are due to inconsistencies in strategy. The first guideline is if managerial problems continue despite changes in personnel, and if they tend to be issue-based rather than people-based, then strategies may be inconsistent. The second guideline says that if success for an organizational department means or is interpreted to mean failure for another department, then strategies may be inconsistent. And the third check for the consistency is if policy problems and issues continue to be brought to the top for resolution, then strategies may be inconsistent. Whereas when we talk about consonance, consonance refers to the need for strategists to examine sets of trends. And that is actually a very important concept, that we need to examine sets of trends as well as individual trends in evaluating strategies. A strategy must represent an adaptive response to the external environment and to the critical changes occurring within it. One difficulty in matching a firm's key internal and external factors is the formulation of strategy is that most trends are the result of interactions among other trends. For example, the daycare explosion came about as a combined result of many trends that included a rise in the average level of education, increased inflation, and an increase in women in the workforce. Although single economic or demographic trends might appear steady for many years, there are waves of change going on at the interaction level. When we talk about Rumoulet's criteria for evaluating strategies, the next expression we have for internal consideration is feasibility. And it is said a strategy must neither overtax available resources nor create unsolvable subproblems. The final broad set of strategy is its feasibility. That is, can the strategy be attempted within the physical, human, and financial resources of the enterprise? As we discussed about this expression earlier in our third strategy formulation framework, in which we discussed feasibility, suitability, and acceptability criteria, which was taken up as the success criteria. So same is the discussion which is launched by Freda David in his book. And as he said, that can the strategy be attempted within the physical, human, and financial resources of the enterprise? The financial resources of a business are the easiest to quantify and are normally the first limitation against which strategy is evaluated. It is sometimes forgotten, however, that innovative approaches to financing are often possible. Devices such as captive subsidiaries, sale leaseback arrangements, and tying plant mortgages to long-term contracts have all been used effectively to help win key positions in suddenly expanding industries. A less quantifiable but actually more rigid limitation on strategic choice is that imposed by individual and organizational capabilities. So, in evaluating a strategy, it is important to examine whether an organization has demonstrated in the past that it possesses the abilities, competencies, skills, and talents needed to carry out a given strategy. And when we focus upon the advantage derived from a strategic frame, it is said that a strategy must provide for the creation and or maintenance of a competitive advantage in a selected area of activity. Competitive advantages normally are the result of superiority in one of three areas. And those three areas are: number one, resources; number two, skills; and number three, position. And obviously, when we are talking about resources, it would include the list of tangible and intangible, all the resources, and the skill set possessed by the organizational facility, and the strategic position it is holding in the industry. So the idea that the positioning of one's resources can enhance their combined effectiveness is familiar to military theorists, chess players, and diplomats. Position can also play a crucial role in an organization's strategy. Once gained, a good position is defensible, meaning that it is so costly to capture that rivals are deterred from full-scale attacks. Positional advantage tends to be self-sustaining as long as the key internal and environmental factors that underlie it remain stable. This is why entrenched firms can be almost impossible to unseat even if their raw skill levels are only average. Although not all positional advantages are associated with size, it is true that larger organizations tend to operate in markets and use procedures that turn their size into advantage, while smaller firms seek product market positions that exploit other types of advantage. The principal characteristic of good position is that it permits the firm to obtain advantage from policies that would not similarly benefit rivals without the same position. Therefore, in evaluating strategy, organizations should examine the nature of positional advantages associated with a given strategy. Looking back into the history, a few big company household names that disappeared over past years, and they do have certain issues related with them. They must be suffering from strategic myopia. They must have committed certain rigidities. They must have avoided change, which was an inevitable phenomena. So the examples we have are, number one, Compaq. So Compaq was one of the largest sellers of PCs in the world until, under duress, the company was acquired by Hewlett Packard and their name dissolved. Same happened with E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton speaks, people listen, claimed the well-known slogan from 1970s and 1980s, but money laundering and fraud scandals caused people to stop listening. And obviously that happened with Penny Weber, founded in 1880 by William Alford and his colleagues. and by 1990 had 200 brokerage branch offices in 42 states and 6 offices in Asia and Europe. But in 2000, it merged with UBS AG to become UBS PaineWebber. Then in 2003, PaineWebber was dropped and replaced with UBS Wealth Management USA. Same thing happened with Eastern Airlines, Woolworths, Arthur Andersen, and Transworld Airline. So there can be many other stories as well, but they're all stories of the past now. Now let's look at that why strategy evaluation is more difficult today. There are certain reasons for this happening. Number one, a dramatic increase in the environment's complexity. Number two, the increasing difficulty of predicting the future with accuracy. Number three, the increasing number of variables. And number four, the rapid rate of obsolescence of even the best plans. The fifth reason that why strategy evaluation is more difficult today talks about increasing in the number of both domestic and world events affecting organizations. And number sixth reason identified by Freda David is the decreasing time span for which planning can be done with any degree of certainty. Now, let's look at the process of evaluating strategies. The strategy evaluation should initiate managerial questioning of expectations and assumptions, should trigger a review of objectives and values, and should stimulate creativity in generating alternatives and formulating criteria of evaluation. When we talk about the process of evaluating strategies, remember that evaluating strategies on a continuous rather than on periodic basis allows benchmarks of progress to be established and more effectively monitored. Successful strategies combine patience with a willingness to promptly take corrective action when necessary. And we should always be following these guidelines whenever we are implementing our selected strategy, so that we can have our sustainability, long-term survival, above average return, and we could maximize the wealth of our shareholders. Now, when we are talking about reviewing basis of strategy, remember, we have to consider that how have competitors reacted to our strategies? How have competitors' strategies changed? How have competitors' strengths and weaknesses changed? And why are competitors making certain strategic changes? These are all the concerns we should be looking at. We should be concerned with. Why are some competitors' strategies more successful than others? How satisfied are our competitors with their present market positions and profitability? How far can our major competitors be pushed before retaliating? And how could we more effectively cooperate with our competitors? These are major issues we should be addressing. And by reviewing competitors' position, we'll be in a better stance to talk about our future course of action. Now, there are certain key questions to address in evaluating strategies. And the first key question is, are our internal strengths still the strengths or not? And perhaps we are asking this question after 1 or 2 financial years, and we are reviewing our strategic performance, and we need to see that after a certain span of time, our strengths are still the strengths or not. Secondly, we should be concerned with asking ourselves that have we added other internal strengths with the passage of time? And if yes, what are those strengths? So that we can capitalize on those strengths in addition to our previous available strengths in the future. Same way, the third question we need to ask ourselves after a periodic time frame, that are our internal weaknesses still the weaknesses? And do we now have other internal weaknesses evolved or not? And if so, what are they, so that we can plan how to overcome those? The next question we should be asking to ourselves would be, are our external opportunities still the opportunities? And are there now other external opportunities as well? And if yes, if so, what are they? And how can we avail them? And are our external threats still the threats? Are there now other external threats as well? And if so, what are they? So these are all the concerns that we should be talking about when we are evaluating our current strategic aspects, so that our future course of action should be more secure, more appropriate, more compliant. And obviously, at the same time, we should also be concerned that are we vulnerable to a hostile takeover or not? Now, looking at a strategy evaluation framework, the first activity we need to perform is to review underlying basis of strategy. And for reviewing underlying basis of strategy, we need to go for preparing revised internal factor evaluation matrix, and we need to revise external factor evaluation matrix. And in those revisions, we need to compare the revised matrix with existing matrix. In either case, if either we are talking about IFE or EFE, and if our internal and external assessments are not having any significant difference, then we'll be moving towards the activity 2. And if there is significant difference between our internal assessment and external assessment after comparison, then we have to go for taking corrective action. Now, supposedly, there is no significant difference. Our internal strengths, weaknesses, external opportunity, threats are mostly kept constant. Then we move to the second activity, which is measure organizational performance. And in that measurement, we need to compare planned to actual progress towards meeting stated objectives. And in that comparison, if there is no significant difference, we move to continue present course. And if there is significant difference, we move to taking corrective action. So that's how year in, year out, we are going to evaluate the strategic frames and to find out that where the gaps are occurring and how can we overcome those deficiencies. Now, when we are measuring organizational performance, strategists use common quantitative criteria to make 3 critical comparisons. The first comparison is comparing the firm's performance over different time periods. Second, comparing the firm's performance to competitors. And number 3, comparing the firm's performance to industry average. The problems with quantitative criteria are, number 1, Most quantitative criteria are geared to annual objectives rather than long-term objectives. And different accounting methods can provide different results on many quantitative criteria. And obviously, intuitive judgments are almost always involved in driving quantitative criteria. Because remember that numbers cannot tell the whole truth. Some of the additional key questions are, number one, how good is the firm's balance of investments between high risk and low risk projects? How good is the firm's balance of investments between long-term and short-term projects? And how good is the firm's balance of investments between slow-growing markets and fast-growing markets? So these are the additional key questions we need to address. Some more questions are, how good is the firm's balance of investment among different divisions? To what extent are the firm's alternative strategies socially responsible? What are the relationships among the firm's key internal and external strategic factors? And how are major competitors likely to respond to particular strategies? Your book is talking about certain corrective actions, and these corrective actions possibly needed to correct unfavorable variances in our performance. The first corrective action is alter the firm's structure. The second corrective action can be replace one or more key individuals. The third option we have is divest a division. The fourth alternative can be alter the firm's vision and mission. There can be revised objectives. We can change strategies. We can devise new policies. We can install new performance incentives. We can raise capital with stock or debt. We can add or terminate salespersons, employees, and or managers. We can allocate resources differently. And we can even go for outsourcing our business functions. Now, the balance scorecard can also provide us very important information about how well is the firm continually improving and creating value among measures such as innovation, technological leadership, product quality, operational process, efficiencies, and so on. The balance scorecard can also address that how well is the firm's sustaining and even improving upon its core competencies and competitive advantage, and how satisfied are the firm's customers. The balanced scorecard approach to strategy evaluation aims to balance long-term with short-term concerns, to balance financial with non-financial concerns, and to balance internal with external concerns. And that is the major reason that it is called and known as a balanced scorecard. Now we are looking at another example of balanced scorecard. We also talked about the scorecard and dashboard technique in our previous sessions. And the example we have just presented over here is talking about areas of objectives, which may include customers, managers and employees, operations and processes, community and social responsibility, business ethics and natural environment, and it can be the financial aspects. And in addition to these areas of objectives, we need to talk about measure or target related to our areas of objective, time expectation for those particular objectives, and primary responsibility. These are the concerns we need to address in the balanced scorecard. There are certain characteristics of an effective evaluation system, like strategy evaluation activities must be economical. Too much information can be just as bad as too little information. So the information overload should be avoided. And too many controls can do more harm than good. So there should also be a free will, and we should also be concerned the risks associated with the free will. Yet too many controls can obviously harm, can hinder in the performance and progress. And activities should be meaningful, should specifically relate to a firm's objectives. And that can always and only be done when objectives are smartly defined. We should also remember that activities should provide timely information. Activities should be designed to provide a true picture of what is happening, and activities should not dominate decisions, should foster mutual understanding, trust, and common sense. Always remember that we need to go for contingency planning. For example, if a major competitor withdraws from particular markets, as intelligence reports indicate, what actions should our firm take? And for example, if our sales objectives are not reached, what actions should our firm take to avoid profit losses? So what if plans, contingency plans, the plan B needs to be discussed along with the plan A. Supposedly, if demand for our new product exceeds plans, what actions should our firm take to meet the higher demand? If certain disasters occur, what actions should our firm take? We can also go for scenario building. If a firm technological advancement makes our new product obsolete sooner than expected, what actions should our firm take? So we should be always ready for what if this happens like that. Now there are certain tips for effective contingency planning. The first tip is identify both beneficial and unfavorable events that could possibly derail the strategy or strategies. Specify trigger points, assess the impact of each contingent event, and develop contingency plans. Further tips are: assess the counter impact of each contingency plan, determine early warning signals for key contingent events, and for contingent events with reliable early warning signals, develop advanced action plans to take advantage of the available lead time. And for the whole purpose, we should always be concerned with auditing. And auditing is a systematic process of objectively obtaining and evaluating evidence regarding assertions about economic actions and events to ascertain the degree of correspondence between these assertions and established criteria, and communicating the results to interested users. Now we are looking at the 21st century challenges in strategic management. And the first biggest challenge is deciding whether the process should be more an art or a science, deciding whether strategies should be visible or hidden from stakeholders, and deciding whether the process should be more top-down or bottom-up in respective firms. Now, why we are encountering with these challenges? Because environmental complexities and environmental variables, they are always increasing and changing. There is a persistent uncertainty, and we need to always remain very vigilant about the future, about the competition, about the trends evolving in the market, about the customer needs and wants, about the technological revolutions. And in addition to all these things, the natural calamities and disasters, the pandemics, the floods, the earthquakes, the environmental warming, the global warming, the environmental constraints, the greenhouse effect, the ozone layer depletion, the pollution, the wars taking place at different parts of the world, the socio-cultural exchanges across the borders. These are all the concerns which we need to look at, which are placing challenges for us. The cyber-physical systems of the fourth industrial revolution, they're always evolving. What next is coming? What is the new paradigm shift? What is the new normal we are exposed to? These are all the 21st century challenges in strategic management. So that basically concludes our chapter. Thank you very much for joining in this session.